Let's talk Raiders as it relates to the best ball championship on draft.com. I'm willing to give Derek Carr a mulligan for last year's bad play. It was John Gruden's first year out of retirement, and it's pretty clear that winning games was not the organization's primary focus. The best two players on their rosters got traded, including Derek Carr's number one weapon, Amari Cooper. Despite the loss of Cooper, the consistent negative game scripts put Carr in a position to clear 4,000 passing yards for the first time in his 5-year career, but don't let that fool you. It was not a good year for Derek Carr in real life or in fantasy. In fact, it was the first time Derek Carr failed to pass for at least 20 touchdowns in a season since he joined the league. His touchdown rate, which was 3.4% last year, was also a career low. The big question with this team and the offense especially is, what do we expect from the additions of Antonio Brown and Tyrell the Gazelle Williams? What will they do for Derek Carr? Well, the goal should be simple, right? It should be to get Derek Carr back to being productive the way he was in 2015 and 2016 when he was averaging a 5.3% touchdown rate and 30 touchdowns per year between those two seasons. I'm inclined to think that Derek Carr is going to bounce back this year. I think where he's going in drafts as the quarterback 23 off the board is a value, and as it relates to the $3.5 million best ball championship on draft, I think the Oakland Raiders stack is a good opportunity to gain leverage on the field. The upside stacking Carr gives you with either of his top two weapons is quite a bit higher than ADP would suggest. In part, this has to be because of the bad press that Antonio Brown couldn't seem to separate himself from following the 2018 season. Now, there's two schools of thought as it relates to AB, aka Mr. Big Chest. Some people think that Antonio Brown was putting on a show, doing whatever he could to make the Steelers comfortable with moving on from him, and another group of people think that AB actually went nuts. Now, I don't know which is true. I don't think anybody except for Brown himself does, but if I'm being 100% totally honest, 100% real, right? I don't really care what's true, right? We're talking about one of the best wide receivers in NFL history, a guy with 6 straight years of over 100 receptions, over 1,200 yards and double-digit touchdowns in 5 out of the last 6 seasons, including last year where at age 30 he led the NFL with 15 receiving touchdowns. There is a reason they called this dude Mr. Big Chest. Well, actually maybe there's not, because that's one of the more ludicrous nicknames that I've ever heard, but you know what they should call him is Mr. Big Stats. I'm sorry, I was too proud of myself for that. Don't get me wrong, I understand there are red flags. We are talking about a 31-year-old wide receiver switching teams for the first time who is undoubtedly getting a downgraded quarterback. I mean, even if Carr does bounce back, he's not going to be Ben Roethlisberger all of a sudden, but still. Antonio Brown at pick 19, bottom half of the second round, I wouldn't overthink it, especially if he falls, which, you know, I've seen him do. Depending on who you're drafting with, you might see Antonio Brown fall to the 2-3 swing. And, you know, if you're in that position, pairing him as your wide receiver 1 with one of those elite running backs you snagged at the top, I mean, that's a lot to even think about. That's a great start to a best ball championship roster. When it comes to Tyrell Williams, you know, I have mixed feelings. On one hand, he is the type of deep threat, high upside player that I try to draft at wide receiver. If you've watched any of my videos, you know that's the type of guy I'm looking to target, and I'm not opposed to drafting him. I don't want to say that, but he's going right ahead of guys like Michael Gallup, Deshaun Hamilton, Andy Isabella, Anthony Miller, and yes, I would take him ahead of all of those guys, I would. But the reason that I don't find myself drafting Williams often is really because of the depth at wide receiver and how scarce the other positions are. So where Williams is going in the 11th round, sometimes the 12th, there's a pretty substantial drop-off in the running back and tight end tiers at that part of the draft. I have some Williams exposure, and, you know, I'm not opposed to getting more. All in all, I think he's a good pick where he's going if you're looking for wide receiver in that range. And, you know, in terms of him, he has the clearest path to targets that he's probably ever had. So, you know, I like going there, especially if you're planning to go after Derek Carr later. Josh Jacobs is a player that I've got some interest in. I've got some shares of Josh Jacobs, especially when he makes it to round 4. I'm all over that, but I don't really think stacking him with Derek Carr makes too much sense. He's got too much of his receiving work being vultured by, controversial anti-vax satellite back Jalen Richard. And conversely, I don't expect Jacobs to be a zero in the passing game either. He should get targeted enough that I would be more comfortable projecting Jalen Richard with the 37.5 targets that he averaged in his first 2 years compared to the massive spike he saw last year where he ended up with 68 receptions on 81 targets. I think Jacobs will take enough of Richard's work away that Richard won't have any standalone value, and I think that Richard takes enough of Jacobs' work away that stacking him with Carr doesn't make much sense, although I do like the value as a standalone pick for Josh Jacobs. Thanks guys, that's all I've got for today. I know I didn't really mention Darren Waller at all, but when it comes to drafting Darren Waller, I think it's kind of one of those situations where, if you see something, say something, because if you're drafting Darren Waller, you're probably not right mentally. I would seek help, honestly. If you guys have any interest in competing for the $1 million top prize that comes with winning the $3.5 million best ball championship on draft.com and you've never played on their site, head on over and use promo code UPSIDE when making your first deposit, and Draft will give you a free $3 coupon to use in a contest of your choice. Once again, that is promo code UPSIDE. Thank you guys for watching.